Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to give you the essential insights straight from the source. Today, we're looking at Thermo Fisher Scientific, TMO, on the NYSE, a real giant in its field. We're going to unpack their third quarter 2025 financials, but maybe more importantly, their strategic direction, where they're steering the ship for scientific research.
Absolutely. And when a company pulling in over, $40 billion annually makes strategic shifts, well, everyone in life sciences tends to sit up and take notice, right? So our job today is really to boil down this pretty dense report. We're looking beyond just the numbers, trying to understand the why. What do their latest innovations, their acquisitions, what does all that signal for pharma, for personalized medicine down the line?
Yeah, that scale is just immense.
Yeah.
And it all ties back to their mission, doesn't it? Enabling customers, making the world healthier, cleaner, safer, the huge operational machine behind that mission. So let's get into the Q3 numbers first.
Okay, so the top line number, the one grabbing headlines, was revenue, a solid 5% growth year over year that hit $11.12 billion for the quarter, up from about $10.6 billion last year. But digging a bit deeper, the organic growth figure was 3%.
Right, and organic growth, just to clarify for everyone, that strips out things like currency fluctuations and, crucially for TMO, recent acquisitions. So that 3% is the growth from their sort of existing core business. That difference between 5% reported and 3% organic, that's a signal right there.
And it points towards?
Well, it leads us straight into earnings, and specifically that really key difference between GAAP and adjusted or non-GAAP earnings. For a company that relies so heavily on M&A, GAAP earnings often look, noisy. Lots of one-off costs, integration expenses, things like that.
Okay, so let's start with the standard accounting view. What did GAAP show? Under GAAP rules, diluted earnings per share, or EPS, came in at $4.27, which was, interestingly, almost flat compared to $4.25 in the same quarter last year. So GAAP suggests stability, maybe not dramatic growth.
Okay, but then there's the adjusted picture.
Exactly. And the adjusted EPS, that's designed to show how the core business is really performing. Once you smooth out those acquisition-related bumps, it's meant to reflect operational health.
And that's where the story gets a bit more positive.
Definitely. Adjusted EPS grew 10% to $5.79. That's quite a jump from $5.28 in Q3 2024. And you see that operational strength reflected in the adjusted operating margin, too. It expanded quite nicely to 23.3%, up from 22.2%.
So nearly a full percentage point improvement in margin. That shows they're getting more efficient, right?
It certainly points towards efficiency gains, yeah. Even with that more modest underlying organic revenue growth, they're running the business tighter.
Right, that margin expansion is interesting. But how are they achieving it? Is it just, squeezing costs, or is there something more fundamental?
CEO Mark Casper pointed to two things. Their, quote, proven growth strategy, which usually means M&A and the PPI business system.
Ah, yes, the PPI business system. Practical process improvement. It's really central to understanding TMO. It's basically their own version of lean management, continuous improvement. Think Kaizen, but tailored for Thermo Fisher. It's the internal engine they use across the whole massive organization, especially for integrating all those companies they buy, standardizing things, driving those efficiencies we just talked about.
Okay, so that's the internal mechanism, running a tight ship, integrating acquisitions effectively. But looking outwards, strategically, probably the biggest headline from the quarter was this new collaboration they announced with OpenAI. Oh, absolutely. That feels like a really significant future-facing move. It could potentially shift how people see Thermo Fisher, moving beyond just being a supplier of instruments and consumables, important as that is, towards being a company that leverages cutting-edge AI and data science. And they're talking about using AI across the board, operations, products, services. It sounds pretty comprehensive.
The goal they stated is accelerating scientific breakthroughs, improving drug development. But how does partnering with, an AI company like OpenAI actually help in the lab? What's the practical application?
Well, think about it. TMO has this enormous installed base of complex, expensive scientific instruments out there, right? Sequencers, microscopes, mass specs. AI could be used for things like predictive maintenance on that equipment. Imagine knowing before a multi-million-dollar machine goes down. That saves massive amounts of time and money for their pharma clients. Or think about analyzing the huge data sets coming off DNA sequencers. That currently takes skilled bioinformaticians a lot of time. If AI can help speed up that analysis, turning raw data into actual insights for drug discovery or diagnostics much faster, Well, that's incredibly valuable. It's about boosting their customers' productivity.
So it's embedding intelligence into their existing ecosystem. Makes sense. That AI move definitely signals a shift towards maybe higher value services, but they still need to deliver the core tools, the actual hardware and reagents. Let's talk about some of the specific new product innovations mentioned, especially around precision medicine.
Yeah, the product launches are where you see the mission in action, right? Serving science. In precision medicine, the big one this quarter was the FDA approval for their Oncomine Dx Express Test. It runs on their Ion Torrent Genexus DX integrated sequencer. I know, it's a mouthful.
Huh, yes. So what does that actually do for, say, a lung cancer patient?
It dramatically speeds up getting the right treatment. It's a companion diagnostic specifically approved alongside a new drug called ZEFRVY for non-small cell lung cancer. It profiles the tumor's genetics very quickly, right there in the hospital lab using that integrated sequencer. So instead of sending a sample away and waiting potentially weeks to know if a specific targeted therapy is suitable, you can get results in, well, potentially hours or a day. That means faster decisions, getting the patient on the right therapy much sooner. That's critical in oncology.
Huge difference. And they also highlighted work in neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
They launched a new panel, the Alinki Target 48 Neurodegeneration Panel. This lets researchers measure, I think, 48 different protein biomarkers related to these diseases all at once. It helps scientists trying to map out the complex molecular pathways involved in conditions like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. It's a specialized tool for a really challenging research area. High value.
And also something new in structural biology. That's key for designing new drugs.
Yep, a new microscope. The Thermo Scientific Talos 12 Transmission Electron Microscope, or TEM. The interesting things here, beyond just better image resolution, are ease of use and automation. TEMs are traditionally very complex, needing highly specialized operators. TMO seems to be making this powerful technology more accessible, more routine for labs involved in drug development, or even advanced diagnostics, again, speeding up the process for their customers.
Okay, so we've got the internal efficiency from PPI and the innovation pipeline churning out new tools. But as we said, TMO's growth story is heavily tied to acquisitions. How did they use their capital this quarter on the M&A front?
Well, they executed that playbook pretty much perfectly, making two key acquisitions in complementary areas. First, they bought the filtration and separation business from Solventum.
Solventum, that's the 3M healthcare spinoff, right?
That's the one. This acquisition bolsters their capabilities in bioproduction. Think filters and components used in manufacturing biologic drugs. It's kind of a vertical integration move, securing parts of the supply chain.
Okay, makes sense. And the second deal?
The second one addresses a known pinch point in the pharma industry: sterile fill finish. They acquired Sanofi's manufacturing site in Ridgefield, New Jersey. This site specializes in filling vials and syringes under sterile conditions. There's a global shortage of this kind of contract manufacturing capacity. So by buying this site, TMO instantly expands its ability to offer this high-demand service to drug companies, especially in the U.S.
So strengthening the supply chain for making biologics and adding capacity for finishing them seems very strategic.
Exactly. It fits their model perfectly. And just to complete the capital allocation picture, they also return cash to shareholders. They repurchased $1.0 billion of their own stock during the quarter.
$1 billion.
Yeah. So deploying capital for strategic growth via M&A and also returning value to investors. Classic TMO.
Now, just to give everyone a feel for where all this revenue actually comes from inside the company, they have 4 main business segments. We don't need to list every single detail, but maybe just highlight the contrast. Like, where's the bulk of the revenue versus where are the highest margins?
Yeah, the contrast is really the key takeaway. The biggest segment by far is laboratory products and biopharma services. That brought in nearly $6 billion, $5.970 billion to be exact. That's well over half their total revenue, about 53.7%. This is their workhorse segment. Think lab consumables, equipment, services for pharma R&D and production. But interestingly, it has their lowest segment income margin, around 14.5%.
Okay, so high volume, lower margin. That's the foundation. Where's the big profit driver then?
That would be the Life Sciences Solutions segment. It's smaller in revenue, about $2.6 billion to $2.588 billion, but its segment income margin is way higher, a really strong 37.4%. This is where you find things like their advanced genetic sequencing technologies, the Olink proteomics platform they acquired, cutting-edge diagnostic components, basically the really high-tech proprietary stuff.
Got it. So that's the engine. Massive scale in services and consumables, fueled by high profits from the cutting-edge life science tools.
Precisely. And the other two segments, analytical instruments like the TEM we mentioned and specialty diagnostics, they sit somewhere in the middle. Analytical instruments had about $1.9 billion revenue with a solid 22.6% margin. Specialty diagnostics was smaller, $1.17 billion, but with a very healthy 27.4% margin. So it's a diversified mix, but clearly structured around that volume base and the high margin tech engine. That blend supports the overall adjusted operating margin we discussed earlier. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, that gives us a pretty comprehensive picture of Thermo Fisher's Q3. I think the main takeaway for you listening is seeing this balancing act, driving internal efficiency with that PPI system, while simultaneously using acquisitions very aggressively to shape the market. Plus, making these calculated, forward-looking bets on things like AI and advanced diagnostics.
I agree. It's a well-oiled machine in many ways, and this brings us back to the finances we started with. We talked about that strong 10% growth in adjusted EPS, which looks great, but we have to remember why they adjust the numbers and what gets left out to arrive at that adjusted figure.
You mean the gap between the GAAP number and the adjusted number again? The
Oh.
noise you mentioned earlier.
Exactly that. If you look at the reconciliation tables in their report, the part that shows how they get from GAAP to non-GAAP, well, it's quite revealing. Just in this one quarter, Q3 2025, they excluded $435 million just for the amortization of intangible assets acquired in previous deals.
Wow, $435 million in just 3 months.
Yeah.
That's essentially writing down the value of things they bought previously.
That's basically it. It's the accounting charge related to the value assigned to things like customer relationships, patents, technology from companies they've acquired over the years. It's not a cash expense in the quarter, but it represents a real cost incurred when they made those deals. So, given that Thermo Fisher's whole model relies so heavily on constantly buying other companies like the filtration business and the Sanofi site this quarter, it leads to a pretty interesting question.
Okay, let's hear it. The final provocative thought.
Well, how should you, as someone analyzing this company or just interested in the sector, balance the undeniable strategic value they get from these acquisitions? The expanded capabilities, the market share. How do you balance that against the significant ongoing financial drag from amortizing all those intangible assets they acquire? That $435 million isn't a one-off. It's a recurring feature. Is this massive recurring charge just the necessary cost of doing business at their scale, the price of being the world leader? Or could it potentially mask a longer-term vulnerability in how they generate sustainable cash flow? What's the true all-in cost of serving science through this relentless expansion?
That's a great question to chew on. It really gets to the heart of evaluating a company built on M&A. Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.